That's a really good question. So let me start from the perspective of don't think of a call with a prospect or a client over Zoom as anything other than you being in the same room with that person. So if you wouldn't be multitasking if you were in the same room with that person, don't do it over Zoom. If you really don't care about the person who's on the other end of the Zoom call, you will be doing those things and that person will sense it. They will see it. They will see your eyes going somewhere else. They'll see your body style, your body positioning change, and they will quickly get your projection that you don't want to be there with them. So that's the first thing I would say. If you're not going to do it with them in person in the room, don't do it over Zoom. Second is your job in selling is not to talk. Your job in selling is to help the prospect pull out and talk about and clarify the challenges that they're trying to solve and the significance of those challenges, and then understand two things. One, what happens to them if they stay with that challenge or that problem? And what happens to them if they can solve that challenge or that problem? And you have to do that because what you have to figure out is is what I have to charge for my product or my services to them to help them solve that problem. Is it worth it to them to solve it? So what am I saying? So if somebody says to you, I have a problem, and you say, well, what is that problem? If I solve that problem for you, what is it worth? And they say, well, it's worth $1. And you say, yes, but I have to charge you 10, then there's no reason for them to do business with you. But if they say to you, well, it's only worth a dollar for me to solve that problem, but they haven't really delved into the significance of that problem and what it really costs them in time or in energy or in exposure or in risk or any of those other things, they really don't understand it. So again, your job isn't to sit there and talk to them. Your job is to help expose those issues, help expose those problems, help expose the value of solving those problems. While you're doing that, the thing that should happen is that they should learn to trust you and learn to trust your judgment. So the more you just sit there and talk, even though it sounds good so you can explain all the wonderful things you do, basically what you're doing is you're not focused on them, you're focused on yourself. So treat them the same on Zoom as you do in person, focus on them and helping them solve their problems. Hopefully that helps. Funny thing about sales is that a lot of us are trained to do what we call discovery. And there's all these questions that we're told to ask. How much are you spending today? Who's your current vendor? How long has they been a vendor? What do you like about them? What don't you like about them? And the interesting thing about these questions is they're all very, very tactical. They're all about the business that's going on. And people don't wake up in the morning and say, oh my goodness, I have a business problem. I need a new X. They don't do it. It's not what they think about. They might wake up in the middle of the night and say, wow, I got to figure out why I'm losing all these employees. Wow, I got to figure out why I've lost 3% of market share over the past 12 months. Wow, I've got to figure out why my average price per deal is decreasing. These are the things they think about. They don't think about, wow, I need a new CRM or I need a new this or a new that. All right. So the questions that you're trying to ask should not be about the technical issues. If you're asking technical issues questions, a couple of things are going on. One, if you're asking technical issues questions, then you're speaking to the wrong person. You need to get up and leave the room. That's not a decision maker. That's an implementer. So if you're asking technical questions, stop. You're asking the wrong questions or you're speaking to the wrong person. You need to figure out the impact of the business. There's only two things a business cares about: top line and bottom line. Revenue, expense. Those are the only problems that they can have, or or those are the only two things that their problem can impact. So ask them questions about that and ask them questions about themselves. And if you don't have 4 or 5 questions in the back of your head that you're trying to get answers to before you go in, then you're not prepared. Don't go in. Then you're not prepared as a salesperson. So stop with the tactical questions if you're trying to speak to a decision maker. Ask the questions that decision makers are going to want to answer and that you need to answer so that you can understand how big the problem is. And talk about how that impacts them personally. Don't walk in with candid questions. People see through that right away. The reason you have questions preset is to guide you, not to be the only thing that you ask. If you're exhausted after a call, there's a good probability that you're expending too much mental energy. which means that you're doing too much pushing or too much thinking or too much talking, which means that your focus is on you internally. Your focus is not on your prospect. The focus should be on them. This should be a fun exploration. You should feel like a detective who's trying to understand how you can help this person, trying to understand what problems they have, trying to understand what the impact of those problems are. You shouldn't be stressed about thinking about that. And by the way, if you want to jot down the kinds of things that you want to learn from person, if you want to say, hey, these are the 5 areas I want to understand about this person, have them written down on a notepad, and I don't care if you're in front of them or if you're in Zoom, and then jot down some answers. You can do that. But if you're spending so much time and energy thinking about what the next question is, what am I going to do with the way this person answers that question? How do I make sure that I ask them? If all of that's what's going on in your head, yeah, you are going to be exhausted. The second thing I would say to you is that if you're feeling like that after 45 minutes, either you've closed the deal or you're spending too much time in the call. I mean, hate to say it. There are very, very few things that motivate human beings. And as I've said, and you'll hear me say many times, from a business perspective, there are only two problems they can have. They're either top line or bottom line. There's only two. You really shouldn't be talking 45 minutes about whether it's one or two. On the personal side, there aren't that many problems that people are trying to solve that are of a nature that they can talk with you. You should know what those problems are. I'd suggest if you want, go look at Tony Robbins, his 6 motivators. There's only 6. If you understand what they are, you're going to have a much more meaningful conversation with the prospect. 45 minutes is too long. That's all I can say. Shorten it. Hope that you can sit sometimes in a movie and the movie can be 3 hours long and you get up at the end of it and you go, wow, that was a really short movie because it so captivated your attention. If you've ever seen it or not, I'll just give you one example. The first time I saw a movie called Dances with Wolves, I said, wow, this is such a short movie. It was only 20 minutes. It was, I think, 3.5 hours long because the storytelling, the captivation, the emotions all were done so well that time kind of disappeared. Time is not the issue. There should be not how long should a call take. What you really should be thinking about is the first thing you should be thinking about is what is my objective for the call? What am I trying to accomplish? You can never go into, and I'll give you an example, you can never go into an initial call on something other than a simple transactional product and say, my objective is to close the deal. By definition, complex deals, complex sales take time. Yeah, if somebody walks into the shoe store and you're working as a shoe salesman, and yes, that is a real job, so don't knock it. And you, as the shoe salesperson, say, what's my objective for this person coming in? I'm going to sell them a pair of shoes. You can do that. It's transaction oriented. But think about, there might be initial bonding that you want to do. There might be initial discovery that you want to do. You might want to reinforce the fact that you understand the challenges that they have and the problems. There are many different things you can accomplish in a call. So the first thing is you should know what that objective for the call is. You should be willing to stop at the end of that objective, and you should know how long it should take you to achieve that objective. So no, there is no simple, every call should be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, etc. The second point I will tell you is that according to some research, in presentation mode, which could be considered the same as a call, but in presentation mode, it's been determined that you lose the prospect's interest after 22.5 minutes. And what most people do in sales is they try to talk about who they are, who their company is, the value that they bring, the case studies, the customers. They try to do all of that so that they think that the prospect or the customer is going to say, wow, this is amazing. You're wonderful. In the meantime, you're putting the poor person to sleep. By the time they get to their 45 minutes, that person has so checked out, they're not even ready to hear what the value proposition is. So know what you're going in to do, know how long it should take, try to keep it down to 20, 25 minutes, because otherwise you're going to lose the prospect. This question has an awful lot of misinformation around it. When you say build rapport, what do you really mean? What are you really trying to accomplish? Do you want the person to like you? Who cares if they like you? If you are truly selling and your objective is to discover what it is that the person has as a challenge, what is it that the person is trying to solve? What is the value of solving that? What do they care if they like you or not? Right? I will give you a very typical example, and I know it's small, but use it. You walk into the grocery store, you want to buy a chicken. You want to get a fresh chicken. You ask the person behind the counter, hey, what's the freshest chicken? Do you really care if they like you? No, you're trying to accomplish a transaction, a task, and that is to get a chicken. Who cares if they like you? I'm not saying you wanted them not to like you, but what I am saying is what you really are trying to get them to do is you're trying to get them, their subconscious, to quickly understand that you're okay to deal with, that you're not going to hurt them, that the fight or flight does not have to happen. You're not a monster that's going to eat them, that you're safe to speak to. The second thing, very shortly thereafter, and there's a time sequence to this, the second thing very shortly thereafter is that they have to perceive you as being okay to speak to, that you're going to be a person they consider that you can solve their problem for them. So, do you walk in the beginning and start screaming at them? Do you start telling jokes? Do you walk in with green hair when you're talking to a conservative person? Think about all of that. Think about the fact that we make our first impressions with our eyes. I don't care if you're in Zoom or if you're in person. Think about the fact that the first instance within the first 4 to 6 seconds that the person's subconscious decision, the first one that it makes is, can I trust this person? Yes or no? Not do I like this person? Can I trust this person? Yes or no? If they say yes, then the rest of however long your conversations with them is the conscious brain trying to tell the subconscious brain you were wrong or tell it you were right because it made the decision to do business with you in the very beginning. So what do you want to do? You want to show that you respect them. You want to show that they can respect you. And that's just by trying to figure out how you can relate to them. Again, this is not about friendship. It's about trust. When they ask you a question, answer them honestly. Don't try to shift them. They ask you a question, says, oh, I don't want to answer that now. I'll answer it later. No, just be honest. Have a conversation with the person. Within the first 5 minutes, you're going to cement that relationship. But stop worrying about whether they like you or not, because at the end of the day, you're not having drinks with them. Hope that helps.